Don't think I wasn't clapping for you. It just made this weird sound when I did.
One hand clapping.
Exactly. Congratulations again on such a magnificent movie. I just realized it's literally like almost a year to the day since you premiered this at the Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you have imagined like the journey it would take you on this last year?
No, it's been quite a surprise, the whole thing. Starting at Sundance, where Sundance is a funny place because you never really know what they're gonna like. It's half a market and half a place where people really love movies, and you don't know which half you're gonna get. And in this case, sometimes I think people look at this movie and say there's no big movie stars in it, and it's really sad, and forget it, I'm not gonna buy it. That would be the market response. But for whatever reason that year they said no big movie stars, it's really sad, let's buy it or release it. And then began this year-long journey. But we did 7 film festivals. I mean, little movies like this, no matter what, you have to just trot them around from festival to festival and try to get people to pay attention, and which is great because I love going to film festivals, but it still takes a long time to get the movie out.
Yeah. Have you been all around the world with it? I'm curious what people outside of the States, how they react.
I haven't. Kenny did a full European tour. I would check in with him from time to time, and he would be in some small city in the Ukraine I hadn't heard of, showing the film again, and that sounded really interesting. But I think largely people got it, mostly because I think that he's a very, very brilliant writer, and it's a story well told. I think about the way that he sort of deconstructed the story, which isn't always how it was, and I often wondered why he did that. And it's hard to get Kenny to talk about his own writing and why he does stuff. I know there's a method in there because everything is so good, but he acts like it's all just intuitive, and so he doesn't like to talk about it. But the way that he sort of broke the story up and put it into flashbacks, I think, was really a stroke of genius, because it sort of lets you in slowly inside the character, and it also gives you the impression that there's sort of all the funny moments in the movie and the saddest moments in the movie are sort of back to back, and everything is all mixed up in a way that is very moving for me anyway, watching it.
I'm glad you said funny stuff, because there are parts of this movie that are really funny, and when I tell people that, they just stare at me.
Right. I feel like you're sick.
Right.
Yeah, you're sick.
Well, yes, but and I truly think he's Kenny to you. I have to call him Kenneth.
Okay.
Is just one of the best writers working today, and you were a fan of his before you even worked together, isn't that true?
I auditioned for everything he did and never got anything. I auditioned literally every play he wrote, everything. And then I got, he I think felt bad for me, and he was, there was this guy in New York, I lived in New York, he lived in New York, not far from each other, I kept showing up at every audition, and then he gave me a part in a short of something called the Medieval Play, but he did it as a one-act play. It was really funny, and we were only going to do 4 performances or so, and I got on stage, and I got about 10 minutes into it, and I started laughing, which has never happened to me and ever. I've never had the giggles, and I couldn't stop. And for a minute, the crowd was laughing along, and then they stopped laughing, and I was still on stage, uncontrollably laughing. I think it was years and years of trying to get into his material, and finally I got there, and it just was turned into the giggler, and it was a disaster. So then it was another, 10 years or so before he gave me a chance, and I got to be in this movie.
But so he didn't hold it against you, just
he did for a while,
10 years.
I'm sure. He said that. I said, "I'm really sorry. What was that? It sounded like the crowd was laughing along." He said, "They were laughing for a few seconds, and then only you were laughing." And I said, so he held it against me a little bit.
But it's a testament to his writing.
Yes.
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 He should be flattered.
Yeah.
Has that happened? That's never happened before. Has it happened since? I mean, were you terrified hosting Saturday Night Live? That you were
Oh my God! I wasn't laughing at all. That was one of the scariest things I've ever done. I can barely remember any of it because it was just sheer terror. And so many things went wrong too that I just thought, oh, this is going to be the first Saturday Night Live where everything the whole show just comes to an end. Like I was doing the monologue, and Alec Baldwin was supposed to come on, and he fell on the side of the stage. It was off camera, but I saw the corner of my eye that he just like it looked like he fell on his face, and I was like, should I stop the monologue and go over to him, help him up? But then I saw he was getting up, so I kept going, and then he was rattled, and so he missed his cue again, and then a set fell on someone else. It was also off camera. It was like this giant shit show, pardon the expression. So no, I don't think that I laughed once. I would like to try to do it again in 5 or 6 years when I recover.
This project is so interesting to me too because at one point Kenneth wasn't even going to direct it, was he?
No, he wasn't. He was just writing it, and Matt Damon wanted to direct it. And I think Matt would be, he's very, very smart. Obviously, he's a good writer, but he's been around working, so lucky, the guy. He's gotten to work with every good director, and he's smart enough to watch them and study them and ask questions and be nosy. And then, and he wanted to direct. He still does want to direct something, I think. So he'll make something great eventually, but he didn't want to do this. I think he's so smart that he realized that really only Kenny should have directed it. And so he said, Kenny, why don't you do it? And then, and also he was really busy. And then Kenny did it and let me be in it.
So I keep wanting to call him Kenny, and I can't do that. Ken. I'll call him the man in the blue overcoat.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys caught his cameo in the film. Yeah. Apparently everybody but me knew that was him. Because I'm such a big fan that I didn't recognize him. When you got the script, was it that I don't know how you didn't, or maybe you did, look ahead? I mean, were you trying to uncover this mystery of what had happened to Lee at the time you're reading it, or were you just reading it, on the edge of your seat?
I was pretty much reading it on the edge of my seat, or it wasn't so much suspenseful, but it was just very engaging. It was just like funny right at the right times, or something new happened right at the right time, or it was broke your heart, so I read it again, and I never do that. Most of the times I read a script and I either think, I can't do this, I should get someone better, or I think, or I think, I don't want to do it because sort of A, B, and C, millions of excuses I come up with, but this, I just forgot about all that and read it through the way that you would sort of lose yourself in a good book. And then I read it again, and then about 15 minutes later, magically, somehow he knew, the phone rang, and it was Kenny. He was like, what did you think? And I said, I thought it was beautiful. I said, but really, what did you think? And I said, so I complimented him. I just kept complimenting him until he believed it. Yeah.
At the same time, were you a little scared? Because this is really requiring you to go to places that some actors might not be willing to go.
Yeah, it was definitely intimidating. I sort of thought, okay, I can't do that scene. I won't be able to pull that one off, but I'm not going to tell anybody because I really want to do the part. And also, I know that in Kenny's movies, I mean, everyone talks about him being the sort of writer that he is because his plays have won so many prizes in his movies, but he's also one of the very best actors, directors that I've worked with because he just sits down and asks questions and engages in a conversation as though it was two friends talking about some other friend that they knew when they're talking about the character. It's a very personal, he's not teaching you or telling you how to do it, or it's just a conversation, and it's always really helpful for the actors. I've seen he did it with me, and I've seen him do it with other people, and he leads them to making choices that just somehow work with what the other people are doing. He's great. So I felt comfort and that I knew he would help me. But I was intimidated by a lot of the scenes and also just about being able to hold it all together all the way through and be restrained enough that you're not, there's the old thing, like if you laugh, the audience won't. If you cry, the audience won't. And you have to, there's a lot of opportunities in the movie, I thought, to sort of be more, sort of let everyone know what he's feeling or what he's going through to indicate, and I didn't want to do that, but I know that was a big pitfall out there, and so I was worried about all kinds of stuff. I was worried about how you watch your house burn down with your kids, and how you just stand there and not have it just be following directions, but actually own the choice and believe it, and yeah, I was pretty scared.
Because it just says in the script, I just only recently took a look at the script, and it just says basically he stands there holding the grocery bag.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you ask Ken, for more direction, or was it a discussion?
That was a lot of conversation about the fire, about why he wouldn't try to do something more, and Kenny would never say, I don't want you to do anything because in the rest of the movie, this is how it's going to play out. Because that's not an active thing for a character to do. That's not like a choice that a real human could, human choice. That's like an actor's choice. And so instead the conversation went, why do I just stand there? And he was like, well, I don't know, what would you do? And he'd say, well, I'd run in. He's like, well, you'll get burned. And he'd say, like, but it doesn't matter. Your kids are in there. You do anything you can. And your wife's trying to run in, and you don't want her to get burned. And he'd say, like, but she's already been pulled out, and the kids are already lost. You know that. So he'd just talk you through all those decisions until I felt sort of paralyzed by my own impotence. There's nothing I could do, and so I could only stand there. And holding the groceries, I think, was a really nice detail that he wrote into the script, because it was something that the beginning of how he behaves for the rest of his life, which is just to try to hold on to the very few things, however insignificant and superficial they are, that he has, and to just focus on that alone. Because to drop the literal or figurative groceries would mean to have to pay attention to the horror that is in front of him and in his heart all the time. And so he just is a janitor, and he cleans people's toilets, and he does that, and he goes to the next task. He's a very task-oriented person, just doing one thing after the other, because that is the only place that he can function and not want to kill himself. And so that moment of standing still, holding the groceries, was both a necessity, because he couldn't do anything else, but it was also a beautiful way of foreshadowing how he was going to deal with the whole tragedy.
And I'm assuming that you didn't shoot in sequence, because I know you didn't have like a huge shooting schedule.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there were days where you had to play pastly and then go into presently. How were you able to sort of balance, the happy Lee that we see sort of in the past with, this really grief-stricken person, and probably have to go back and forth several times a day?
I guess we just had to do it that way. So I didn't have a way of going into it and think, okay, now this is how an actor ought to balance these things. It was just a kind of, okay, what are we doing now? And the schedule changed so often that I had to kind of just roll with it, as everyone did. Michelle especially. Michelle had an impossible job of, they would call her in and then send her home, and then call her in. Oh, sorry, it's raining. We're going to do your incredibly difficult emotional scene on maybe Thursday afternoon. We'll let you know. And so she's just so, she's really impressive. She's amazing. And I sort of learned from her to just sort of stay calm and go with it. My instinct was like, you're not respecting the actor. We can't do it like this. Stick to the schedule. But who wants to be that jerk? And so you just like go with it. And then, and also there were so many of those scenes that you fell into a rhythm of sort of going to work, sort of thinking about their saddest things and focusing on all the unresolved things in your life, and show up and be that way. And if they say, guess what, you just get to play ping pong today, you're like, oh yes, I'm just going to play ping pong, and not do the other stuff. So that's how I found my balance.
You mentioned Michelle, and we have to talk about this whole cast. It's just impeccable. I mean, I don't know if you'd worked with Kyle Chandler before or ever met him, but you feel like brothers in these like very quick snippets we get. And then Lucas Hedges.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point did you meet him, and did that relationship just develop naturally, or was it like instant chemistry?
He's very easy to get along with, and he is someone that kind of, he's like one of those things you punch over and it pops back up, like a blow-up thing. So he just takes an enormous amount of grief, and I realized that was a good dynamic for us to have early on, because that's so much a part of what the scenes are. He doesn't give up. He just keeps coming back and it's sort of the thing that finally wears me out. The whole movie I sort of keep everyone at arm's length, and he just keeps pushing my arm away, and finally I just throw up my arms and let him close. And so he's amazing, and he came in at the very last minute. We had already begun rehearsals, and he came in to audition for Kenny, and And I think I said, I was like, don't cast that guy. This is how bad an eye I have for what's good. And everyone in the room looked at me like, you should wait outside. And I think I had a few conversations with Kenny. I said, like, how about that other guy or this guy? And my concern was that he was too old and too intelligent and too stable. Like, you look in his eyes and he seems like a very grounded, mature person. And the movie sort of depends on worrying about this kid. The whole conflict is like, what's going to happen if I don't take care of him? Who's going to take care of him? You know, and he seemed like someone who could take care of himself pretty well. So I thought maybe we should get someone who's more fragile or immature or something. And nobody listened to me, thank God, and they cast him.
Does he have much experience? Because there's something sometimes refreshing about, working opposite someone who is kind of new to it.
I think, he's not that new. It was definitely refreshing to work with him because he's really present in a way that, like, someone who's hasn't learned bad habits, or they're not trying to do something that they, they're like, I don't want to do that because I did it in my other movie, and you're like, what? But he hasn't done, so he's refreshing in that way, but he grew up on sets. His dad was Peter Hedges, who's a director, and he knows he's a real professional, he's been around, you can't impress him, and so or intimidate him. He was a pro for sure, and he worked on a Wes Anderson movie as well, I think.
That's right, he was in Moonrise Kingdom. And I'm curious, just because I don't know if research is the right word, but when you're taking on a character like this, is there any special preparation you do to sort of, like, you're going to be in this place of grief for, 30, 40 days. I mean, do you prepare yourself emotionally for that? Can you?
I wasn't prepared for it totally. But it also, in some ways, it's a tough thing to complain about because I want to be careful. I'm not complaining at all because it's sort of what actors want. It's really, that's the great parts you look for, and I feel incredibly lucky, blessed to have that opportunity to go to that bleak town and be really depressed and beat myself up and be sad, try and feel as horrible as I can for months on end, and that was a blessing because otherwise you're doing things that don't move you, and also if you put yourself through something really hard, at the end of it, you just feel better, or that's how I felt anyway.
Were you able to, once the shooting was over, were you able to sort of walk away from it, or did you find Lee kind of haunted you for some time?
I mean, everything sort of stays with you a bit, and it sounds sort of cheesy, but it's like if you're you just think going into a movie, okay, I'm gonna put everything I have into this, and I'm gonna just not gonna worry about anything else, and some of it can't help but slip back into you, the part does, and so at the end of it, it was a bit like that. But you come home and you get kids and stuff, and they don't allow for that too much. They're like, what's the matter with you? Get outside. We're gonna do something. And so I move away from it pretty quickly, I guess.
How old are your kids?
12 and 9.
Okay, so they probably haven't seen this movie.
They haven't seen it. I told them they could see it though, but they're strangely, of all the movies, I'm constantly trying to not let them watch things that are too violent or too sexual or too much language or inappropriate in a million ways, the way that horror movie, all this stuff that's out there. And the one thing they don't want to watch is they're like, is it sad? I'm like, it's a little sad. Like, no, I don't want to say it. So now, we were on the plane and Suicide Squad, they were like, can I watch Suicide Squad? And I was like, it's very sad. I don't know if you want to watch it. It's extremely sad, that movie. And my son looked at me and he was like, nah, I don't think it is. And I was like, so they can watch it if they want.
Gonna start seeing R ratings for sadness.
Yeah.
May cause sadness. Actually, have they seen any of your movies? I'm trying to think, actually.
Only the worst ones. I have to sit there next to them and be like, I didn't want to do the scene that way. They're like, Dad, shut up. Because
I'm thinking they could probably handle Assassination of Jesse James.
They could, and they were there. My youngest son was there on set for that one, and I think saw some of it. I think they there's some movies that I did before I had kids that are that character who's sort of creepy guy who kills Jesse James, and in some ways it's a very heroic thing to do. Like, my view of the character was he was a teenager. Jesse James was going to kill him. The whole country wanted Jesse James dead. Jesse James was a murderer, like killed so many people, was a terrible guy, and this teenage kid was the only person brave enough to do it. But the way that it comes off still is there's like this very sycophantish, creepy kid. So they watched a little bit of it and they were like, I don't want to see Dad like that. So they didn't stick it out.
Just seeing Dad as a teenager is probably weird enough for kids. I do want to take some questions from the audience. If you have one, raise your hand. We can start right there.
Great job. Thank you so much for this slice of life.
Thank you.
Kenneth seems to have a great talent for draining all of the awkwardness out of a scene and making it comical.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so many great moments like that where this camera keeps rolling. Obviously, that's a little easier these days, and he got great moments from you guys. First, we want to know as actors how much of that is in the script. Like when you miss the ball, when you're awkwardly playing with the ball, and you're just like, just leave it,
Right.
Moments really great. How was that scripted, or you guys just got to play?
He's pretty particular about the words that are spoken. Like, don't try to add some word in and without Kenny getting upset. So that didn't happen a lot. It did happen with the little boy, the kid, because like we're on the boat and the little kid's just talk. He doesn't know when it's rolling or not rolling, and so I was just trying to like keep talking and keep it alive. But in every other scene, it's scripted. That he wrote all his words, and he is very uptight about it. And I say that because I love him, and also because he's almost always right. If you say, down to the instead of an ah. He's like, I think I said ah. Let's look at the script. I'm like, I know it says ah. We don't have to look at the script, but I said And he's like, well, why did you say And I'm like, forget it. I'll just say But the physical stuff, like things that might awkwardly happen, that just happens, and you just try to roll with it when you got zero time, and if I let them cut, they're gonna wrap, so I'm just gonna keep going. But yeah, he keeps a pretty tight hold on things.
It plays so well.
Thank you.
I want to take one from the back if there's, or maybe there aren't any. We'll go right here.
Thank you. Did you think that does he think that maybe that he's a failure for returning to Boston and leaving Patrick behind, or is it a greater kind of cosmic scheme that his brother brings him back, makes him the guardian, and forces him to face life back in Manchester?
Yeah, that's a very good question and a good observation, because he does, I wouldn't say he feels like a failure, but I think that he feels like so much regret and sorrow about what happened with his kids that he is determined to be responsible, if nothing else, in his life, and he is going to be responsible for this kid despite pretty much not wanting to be alive. And so he's not going to let the kid down. On the other hand, returning to Manchester is an unbearable trial for him. He just can't do it. And the moment that he feels like he might have a chance of being able to live there, he runs into that. The only moment in that movie where he's sort of having a nice day, he takes the kids out on the boat, and then he drops them off to be alone and like fool around in the house or whatever, and then he runs an errand, and he runs into his ex-wife, and that's when he knows, like, there's no way he could live there. And I think it was I think definitely, Kenny has said this, so you don't have to imagine that he thought that his brother probably knew that Lee was maybe not the best caretaker in some sense, but that it was going to be the thing that would keep him alive, and he had to make him the sole guardian so that he would stay alive, yeah.
Do you ever wonder about your characters after you've left them behind? Like, do you think about checking in with Lee like a year later? I wonder what he's doing now.
That would be like one step into insanity that I don't know if I'm willing to go.
All right, I'll hold up for the sequel. That's fine. I'm so sorry we are out of time, but I am so thankful for you for being here today. You guys are here, great audience.